Hey guys, welcome to Glorious Day Adventures. So Amy, Skylar, our dog, and I, we love to paddleboard. But when we're on the water, we hear people say as they're paddling by in their kayaks or something, oh, I could never do that. Or they ask questions about how stable is it. We've had people ask us if they can borrow our paddleboards for a little bit just to see how they like it. So we thought we'd create a video specifically about paddleboarding. So we're going to talk about the boards themselves. We bought our first paddle boards 8 years ago, and they are rigid boards, but we recently bought inflatable boards also because my truck is so tall, it's just tough to get them on top of the truck. So if you have a smaller vehicle or a taller vehicle, inflatable paddle boards might be a good solution. So we'll talk about rigid boards, inflatable boards, we'll talk about gear, safety equipment, and then we're going to load the paddle boards up and we're going to head to the water. So when you're looking for a paddleboard, you definitely want a paddleboard with some kind of tie-down point in the bow and the stern. They come in various things. It could just be a handle, but some way to connect a lanyard, a rope. In our case, we love using hammock straps as our straps or our ropes because about every 6 inches they have a loop. And you can use these loops to adjust how you're connected to things. So whether you're connecting to yourself, if you're allowed, depending on where you are, you can wrap this around a tree and connect another carabiner together and just hold yourself in place without putting an anchor into the ground and destroying seagrass and all that stuff. So definitely look for a tie-down point in the bow and the stern. So if you're going to go paddleboarding, I suggest you bring a paddle. So if you buy an inflatable paddleboard, it's probably going to come in some kind of kit. And that kit will be a big backpack, having a paddle in there. Typically it's like a 4-piece paddle that clicks together and becomes a longer, becomes your paddle. Or you can buy more of a rigid paddle. This is 2-piece, the handle comes out. The rigid paddles are more rigid, and so they're a bit more efficient, but the reality is for a casual day on the water just paddling, the paddles that come in those inflatable paddleboard kits are just fine. Okay, apart from the paddle and the paddleboard, there are some things that you should have and some things that you must have based on where you are and what the laws are. So one of the things you should have is a tether, and basically it's Velcro, it's neoprene, it's nice and soft and comfortable, and it goes around your ankle. And then we put a carabiner on the other end. I love carabiners. And we clip it to the back of the boat, the back of the paddleboard. And it basically gives you that assurance that if you fall off your board's not going to go shooting away from you. It keeps it close to you so you can hop back on the board. So if you're uncomfortable and you're in deep water or fast moving water, definitely would recommend having a tether. But I must say, do as we say, not as we do. Again, we've been paddleboarding for 8 years, and maybe we're a little too self-confident, but we typically don't wear tethers. We bought them because we actually were going on a trip that did have fast-moving water, and there was a fair amount of rocks in the river we were going on. And so even though we've been paddleboarding for 8 years, we're like, we should have a tether just in case. All right, let's talk about inflatable paddleboards, which really is probably the most prevalent kind of paddleboard out there nowadays. The technology has come a really long way, and you can have a great experience on an inflatable paddleboard. But you have to inflate it first, and most inflatable paddleboards come with a hand pump. It's pretty common. The higher end ones will come maybe with an electric pump, but most of them come with a hand pump. And if you want a really good workout before you go paddling, the hand pump is the way to go. Or look for a board that comes with an electric pump, or buy a pump separate from your board. We had the Airbank Puffer Pro, and it can plug into your lighter within your car, or it actually is rechargeable and you don't have to plug it into anything, and you can pump your board up anywhere. And the nice thing about these kind of pumps is you can actually enter the pressure you want, and this pump will pump the board up to that level of pressure and then it'll stop. So this is definitely the way to go unless you want a really good workout before you start paddling. Okay, so why did we choose the inflatable paddleboards that we chose? Mine is the Blackfin XL, and Amy has an iRocker. We chose the Blackfin for me for a couple reasons. One, it's 11 feet 6 inches long, so it's a long board. It's 34 inches wide, but for, bless you, Skylar. I don't know if you heard that, but Skylar just sneezed. So it is a little bit longer. So with me and Skylar on there, it gives Skylar a bit more room to move around, and also the weight rating of this board is higher than the iRocker. So it seems to be a really good board for me and Skylar, whereas Amy's is a little bit smaller, at 10 feet long and 32 inches wide. The bigger board is a little bit more difficult to maneuver because it is longer. There's more surface you got to move around the water. So Amy's board is a little bit more maneuverable. Mine's maybe a bit more stable because it's wider and also a little bit longer. You may be asking yourself, why am I holding the pump again? Well, that's because we forgot to mention something really important when it comes to inflating your paddleboard. So this board is rated between 12 and 16 PSI. I don't ever inflate it to 16 PSI. My typical standard is 14.5 PSI. And the reason for that is it's like a big balloon, right? There's a lot of air in there. When the sun hits this surface, the surface warms up, that air expands. So if I were to pump it all the way up to 16 PSI, it's possible that the air would expand and we actually could rupture the paddleboard. Also, when you're pumping it up, trust your pump, whatever it is. Trust the meter or the gauge that's on your pump, because you're going to pump it up and you're going to think, man, this feels great. It's nice and hard and it's rigid, but it's not rigid enough to get in the water. So make sure you understand where to pump it up to. In my case, it's 14.5 PSI, a little bit of headroom there, and trust the gauge that's on your pump, because you're going to think you're done, but you're not. I love my rigid paddleboard. I may love my inflatable even more. It's just cool. Same things that we look for on the rigid, we look for on the inflatable, which is lots of connection points, cup holders, fishing pole holders, ways to strap down coolers, bungee in the front and back. And I tell you, the Blackfin like knocked it out of the park when it comes to all those things. It has probably twice as many connections as my rigid board does. Earlier we mentioned there's things you should have and things you must have. Here in Florida, one of the things you must have is a personal flotation device, life vest. We use these inexpensive kind of foam PFDs. We also have to have a whistle, which is permanently attached to our life vest. And we just put this underneath the bungee on the back of our board. Here in Florida, this kind of PFD you don't have to wear while you're paddling. The second kind of PFD is something that's inflatable. Either it goes around your neck, goes around your waist. There's a little CO2 cartridge in here that you pull this little cord and it inflates. This kind of PFD you do have to wear. So if you travel a lot and you bring your board with you, I would recommend you understand the laws of the state you're going to, just to make sure that you're in compliance and that you get the right kind of PFD for the state you're in. All right, we've talked about rigid boards, we've talked about inflatable boards, we've talked about safety equipment. It's time to put it all to use. So we're gonna load up the boards on the car and head to the water. Before we go to the water, we thought we would show you how we travel with our paddleboards. If we had our inflatable paddleboards, we would just toss them in the back because they're in the bags and it's easy to toss them in the back. But we're bringing our hardboards, so we do have them strapped to the Subaru using a Thule roof rack. And the Thule roof rack locks to the Subaru. And the rack includes these straps that have stainless steel cables inside the strap. So it's really secure if we're traveling and staying overnight someplace. The boards aren't going to walk away. You just can't cut through the strap with a box cutter. So really great way to travel, nice and secure, both traveling and again overnight if we're staying at a hotel someplace. And we do travel with the boards, with the back of the board up front over top of the windshield. And the reason we do that is as you're driving down the road, the wind's hitting your windshield and is reflecting up and trying to push those boards up. And the back of the board is the most narrow part of the board. So having that narrow part of the board over the windshield just creates less surface area and less wind resistance. So yeah, we travel fins forward, and we do use a rope to tie down the front of the boards just for an extra level of protection. I have some paracord that's tied out underneath the hood. And then and that's always there. I never take it off. That paracord loop stays there all the time. And then I can just take a small section of rope and I run it through the tie down point on the top paddleboard and then over to the other side. So it just kind of helps make sure that the boards don't rise up. And it's just a really secure way to travel. We did want to mention one thing for all you SUV owners out there. If you have an SUV and you put your boards on your vehicle, you have to be really careful when you raise your tailgate up, because your tailgate wants to go all the way up, but the boards are rigid and they're in the way. So the Subaru has a memory, which we've set. And so when I open up my tailgate, the tailgate will open up and it'll stop right at the board level. And that's there all the time. So whenever we put the boards on, we have to remember to hit that memory so the tailgate doesn't go up too high. So I would definitely recommend watching your tailgate if you have an SUV. So with that said, now we're going to the water. All right, we're on the water, and we just paddled about 1.25 miles to get out to this really cool little island. It's so beautiful. The water's calm. We got birds up in the trees. It's just paradise. at the house, we talked about how we love all the tie-down points on both our rigid boards and our inflatables. This is Amy's board, and we brought a cooler on her board. Coolers are fantastic on paddle boards, right? They're a great way to bring lunch and have cold drinks, but also they double as a seat, so you can sit down and take a rest, or if you're in choppy waters, you can sit down and just be a bit more stable because you're sitting versus standing. And they tie down. We have these tie-down points on the side. We've got adjustable straps, so they're nice and tight. Amy's life vest is under the bungee in the back. And then the bungee in the front has Amy's shoes. We've got our hammock strap with the carabiner. Another tie-down point with a cup holder that swivels, so as you're hitting waves, your water bottle doesn't fly out. And then we always bring dry bags, and we always clip them to the bungee. And everything is secure, right? When you're on the water, it's really easy to lose track of things, and next thing you know, they're gone. So by having everything secure, you don't lose it, and if you happen to tip over or fall off, you don't lose your stuff because it's all secure on your board. All right, so to get on your board, if you can start in shallow water, you want to make sure you're in deep enough water where your fin isn't going to grab the ground. Otherwise, your fin will grab and you'll go straight over. So we're in deep enough water, knee-deep water, and I'm just going to get on my knees to begin with. And that's it. I'm on the board, and I'm wearing the microphone, and Amy tells me if I fall in that I'm a dead man. So let's hope for the best. All right, so you can paddle on your knees if you want. If you paddle on your knees, you're probably going to grab your paddle really low. And you can just paddle as much as you want on your knees. Great way to start, great way to get on the water. Sitting down is kind of tough because you're so close to the water, it's hard to paddle. But you could do this all day long and experience paddleboarding without even standing up. Okay, so you've mastered paddling on your knees and it's time to stand up and you want to give it a whirl. Best thing to do is hold the paddle in both hands, right? You want to make sure you're holding your paddle because if you lose your paddle, you're in trouble. So hold your paddle in both hands, make some fists, put them on the board, and you can go up one leg at a time if you want. That's perfectly fine. Probably the easiest way to do it. Or as you get more advanced and more comfortable, you can just kind of pop up like that. Either way is fine, but just take your time and do it in shallow water. So if you do fall off, you can get back on your board easily and give it a try. So it's important that your paddle is set for the right length. Paddleboard paddles are adjustable because people are all different. So to make sure your paddle is adjusted properly, put it in front of you, grab the handle, and your bicep, this part of your arm, should be slightly above horizontal. And that's how you know that your paddle is set for the right length. All right, so now that you're standing on your board, how do you know if you're standing in the right spot? So most paddleboards have some kind of handle, strap, something in the middle of the paddleboard for carrying it, and that's a good indication as to where you should stand. You can stand kind of even with that. I actually like standing just a little bit behind it so that the bow of my paddleboard is raised up a little bit, so if I hit waves or something, they don't come over the top of the paddleboard. So just right in back of the handle is the spot for me. All right, so we've talked about how to stand up on the paddleboard. We've talked about where to stand on the paddleboard. Let's talk about how to stand on the paddleboard. And basically the stance you want is you want your feet nice and wide. The wider your feet, the more stable you're going to be. And you can even bend your knees a little bit to give you a little cushion, especially if there's waves coming. Those knees will give you a little cushion like shock absorbers, but nice wide stance on the paddleboard makes you nice and stable. Okay, before we start paddling, it's really important that we have our paddle facing in the right direction. So there is a bit of a scoop to that paddle. You can see it's curved, and you want that curve facing you. So it's in the water, and as you're paddling, that curve is basically grabbing the water. Okay, so basic strokes on the paddleboard is pretty simple. You want to keep your paddle nice and close to the side of the board when you're standing up. And just paddle on each side, nice and easy. You really want to paddle kind of in front of you and almost to your torso. You don't really need to paddle way back here. You want most of your strokes to be in front of you and then just past your feet. Okay, so by alternating your strokes on the left side and the right side, you're going to go straight. But if you wanted to turn, just paddle on the opposite side of the board that you want to turn. So if I want to go left, I just paddle on the right, and the board will turn left. Okay, if you really, really want to turn, right, you want to make a really sharp, wide turn, the best thing to do is still paddle on the opposite side, but if you scoot down and you paddle wide, the board will almost turn on a dime. there's going to be situations where you're going to want to use a backstroke. Maybe there's something in front of you and you need to slow down or stop. And a backstroke is just like the forward stroke, right along the side of the board. The paddle direction doesn't really matter because you're not going fast or far. You're just making small adjustments, maybe to keep yourself in one place. Maybe you saw something cool, you want to check it out. So backstroke, just like forward stroke, and just alternate, and you can control your board. Okay, there's one more stroke we're going to show you, and it's an advanced stroke, but it's super cool, and it's meant for like turning, like I got to turn now. And it's called a crossboard draw, and basically you hold your paddle like you normally do, and you come across your body, and you paddle. And it will literally turn your board in a 360-degree motion without ever moving forward. Okay, after a great day of paddling, the last thing you want to do as you're approaching shore is fall in the water. So just remember you have a fin, and the fin's going to hit the ground before you do, and you'll go flying if you don't sit down. So put both hands on the ground, down to your knees, keep the blade of your paddle horizontal so it doesn't grab the water and doesn't pull you in. And that way when your fin hits, you don't go flying. Good news, I didn't fall in. The microphone's still working. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it inspires you to try paddleboarding because it is a sport like no other. It's like walking on water. It's fantastic. And we enjoyed making the video. So if you liked it, please like and subscribe. Amy's behind the camera, so I have to say that this time. And I'm going to go bloop, bloop. And please follow us on our next adventure. So until then, have a glorious day.